What should be covered in a sex ed class but never is? About 10 to 20% of known pregnancies end in miscarriage. I think the whole teaching about it ought to change. The whole notion of your womb preparing a nurturing environment for an embryo to grow in, and correspondingly if you have a miscarriage there is something wrong with that environment, is kind of a misrepresentation. Pregnancy takes so much of a toll on human bodies, in comparison to other mammals, because of our big brains and insistence on using our pelvises the wrong way, that wombs are built more like a proving ground for a resourceful young zygote. Women have a thick lining to their womb, and thus all of the bullshit they have to go through with periods, not because it's conducive to making babies but because it delays the amount of time it takes to properly implant and become pregnant. And also tests the viability of a zygote before it can start making demands on your body, because if it can survive there it's more likely, although obviously not certain, to make it to full term. It's very purposefully built like a jungle in there. Not forgetting that it also nukes the whole map and starts over every 28 days. More on that. Why do women have periods? What is the evolutionary benefit or purpose of having periods? Why can't women just get pregnant without the menstrual cycle? Answer by Suzanne Saidadine, PhD Evolutionary Biology, Monash University, 2004. Wow, that was a crazy read. Agreed. I am a mom and done with having any more kids, but reading that made me go, yep, definitely closing down the apparent war zone. It is down there for good. Thanks, IUDs. I'd how common this is, but my health classes never taught us about vaginal discharge. Would have been very nice to know. Because I told myself I had somehow ducked up my body for having it, until I looked online and realized it's natural and normal. How vaginal discharge changes based on your fertile days. I straight thought I was getting sick as a teen. And that ovulation cramps are a thing. And I hate them. I've had them since I was a teen and I always thought something was wrong. I would ask my friends and no one else normally got them, so that info didn't help. How to properly check yourself for cancer in your private parts, like testicular and breast cancer. If I would have known what a testicular tumor felt like, it would have saved me a lot of misery and time. A lot of health problems could probably be addressed faster if PPL were familiar with their own bodies. The importance of lubrication, whether natural or bottle. I basically suffered for years because I thought a guy would be offended that I needed lube. Like, ashamed that he didn't get me wet enough. Edit. So many responses. You will be glad to know it's something I did get over and is no longer an issue for me. It was, after all, an issue that was entirely in my own head. I just wish it's something that someone had told me so I wasn't so insecure about it for so long. Just need to tell him it's because he's such a big boy and he'll be glowing all week after lol. I'm gonna need a little something extra for that. Telling people about cleanup. Apparently some girls thought their vaginas would just absorb everything and it wouldn't all come out lol. Although I knew all the mechanics of sex and whatnot, I can safely say that we are absolutely not prepared in any way for the aftermath. Nobody talks about these things. Towels bedside are key. What, lol? Just pick her up and shake her over the kitty litter box. Proper condom disposal. I usually just toss mine in the dumpster, since we're right there behind it anyway. Why not just do it in the dumpster like Frank? Miscarriages. I had no idea that a miscarriage was like 5 days of the worst cramps and unending blood. This is a thing that happens to like 13 of women and most of us have no idea until we have on and then no one talks about it. I think everyone should know just how common miscarriages are. It's quite likely that multiple women you know have had at least one. When you have one and you tell people, they very often chime in with their own story. It's sad how common that is. Often felt like people were grateful they finally had a chance to talk about it. Pornography needs to be put in context. A vast majority of sexual intercourse isn't anything like that. This comment needs to be higher. Learning about sex only through porn is like learning to cook having only watched reality shows where they make a 4-course dinner in an hour while your school system is saying you're too young to use the stove. More like learning how to cook from watching how fast food is being prepared in a factory. We didn't learn about childbirth. At all. Nothing about dilation, contractions, labor, etc. So childbirth. So important. Did you learn about pregnancy in general? Only about the baby growing. Not what the woman goes through. I feel like this would be good at promoting safe sex by showing how pregnancy impacts the body. I've heard from many women that their body is never the same again after having a baby. Too bad like no sex ed talks about it. This is gonna sound dumb, but here it is. In sex ed, they would tell us how much we bleed during our period but never the pressure of the blood. So I went through middle school thinking that if my period started, blood would be gushing out, like if I got stabbed. I was paranoid as a preteen, thinking at any time my period could start and I would end up drenched in blood from the waist down. No one ever told me the blood pressure was not in fact that of a stab wound but more of a nosebleed or a dripping faucet. No one in my first sex ed class told me that your period only lasts between 3 to 8 days, and my very first period was very long and very painful. On day 6 I said to my mom through sobs and tears, "I just don't know if I can keep doing this forever." She rubbed my back and was concerned as she asked me if it hadn't stopped yet. I just looked at her weird and she grabbed my shoulders. "Did you think it didn't stop? No one told you it doesn't stop? Oh honey. Oh God. It stops. It stops. It only happens once a month. I'm so sorry." I was still crying, but partly from relief after that. Edit, I am so glad I'm not alone in this experience. Lol, I'm happy that so many of us can laugh at this past experience, as well. It's so difficult to go through puberty, and a lot of it was embarrassing and scary at the time. For those saying my mom ducked up by not having told me earlier, I just truly think she never thought of mentioning that specific fact. I spoke to her about this stuff, and I had maturation classes in 5th and 6th grade. But I also had ADHD. It's possible that this time frame and cycle was mentioned and I was daydreaming about pirates and apple pie at the time. Give my mama a break, she did her best and she felt really guilty that I had been wrapping myself up in a mental blanket of eternal bleeding and suffering. It's all good now. Oh my God, it's hard enough at that point imagining it happening a few days every month, let alone indefinitely. You guys had sex education classes? Abstinence only. Ah, the forbidden fruit, we are curious creatures, aren't we? How does this actually affect you and what treatments there are available? The amount of people who don't realize being asymptomatic is the most common symptom is shocking. Also, the amount of men who think they still shove a little umbrella up their urethra and scrape it out to cure gonorrhea is sad. You take a pill for it. The invasive penis scraping was a very old and very not used anymore treatment. Also, they could do more to destigmatize getting tested regularly if you have multiple partners or getting tested at the beginning of each relationship if you're a monogamous person. Stis don't devalue you, and I find sex ed really doesn't do anything other than make people feel dirty and ashamed about contracting something. Chances are the person who gave it to you was asymptomatic and didn't know they had it and are also victims of a fear and shame-based sexual health education. Pee after sex to avoid UTIs. Pee after you duck, or you'll be fucked when you need to pee. The whole of the actual clitoral structure. For real. The internal portions of the clitoris are kept so secret. What do they fear? Well, do with the information. We didn't even have the clitoris mentioned. Or anything in the vagina or vulva. We got a diagram of a uterus and that was it. Gynecomastia, aka a sort of temporary enlargement of the breasts or nipples in boys as they go through puberty. I thought I was developing breast cancer. I was horrified for weeks. Thank God for pee in the shower rooms. Saw others who had the same issue, and we talked. One of the boys, whose parents were doctors, could inform us. We learned from each other and not sex ed. Medication can also cause it. Risperdal is one of them. Not just how to prevent getting an STD, but how to handle it emotionally and have honest dialogue with future partners if you do end up getting one. I personally was almost 2 years into a committed relationship when my partner gave me herpes. Aside from the pain and psychological effect it had on me, I was even more hurt to find out years later that he knew he had it from a previous relationship but didn't tell me or try to protect me in any way. Totally preventable and unnecessary. Edit, I feel the need to add to this comment as to not make him a villain. He was failed educationally, which in turn hurt me. There were no winners in this, although I do appreciate all the loving supportive comments. I came to say this. And also that you shouldn't be ashamed of having an STD. It's so common that it's terrible how talking about it is still a taboo for some people.